Welcome, fantasy managers. This is Devo 1099 of Fantasy Football Backers, ready for Game Week 31. It was a long international break for all of us, but we are back with more Premier League action, and we really like how this game week is shaking out. We start off with Arsenal and Liverpool on Saturday around noon, and then we've got a solid slate after that with games all the way through Monday. So we're looking forward to this. As you can see, I've got a slightly different setup here. I hope this is easy to follow, and I'm going to try to work off the article this time. So we're going to start a keeper. There are a number of good keeper options out there. Some of them are slightly higher in the budget. And then there's a couple more inexpensive options that I'm going to discuss. We're going to start with David De Gea, Manchester United. He's got Aston Villa at Old Trafford. He's playing absolutely fantastically all year. Can't go wrong with De Gea. He's gotten a little bit on the more expensive side, particularly because it's hard to see him getting a lot of action with how well the Manchester United defense is played and how poorly Villa sets up to play away from home here. I like De Gea quite a bit. However, I might like my next keeper here, Thibaut Courtois, a little bit more. Stoke City lost Bojan earlier. They've now lost Victor Moses for this match, so they're going to be hard pressed to develop much of a threat away from home here, heading to Stamford Bridge. So Courtois is a slightly cheaper option than De Gea. I think if you're playing in head-to-head or double-up leagues, you're going to want to look more at Courtois if you're getting a discount there, as he has a more likely path to a clean sheet. Next, I've got a player that we haven't mentioned this entire season because he hasn't really played, and that is Boaz Myhill. From West Brom. He has QPR away from home, which, as fantasy managers know, is a ticket to success. QPR is incapable of scoring away from home. They may score. Charlie Austin can always score, but they just have not done it. And Myhill comes in at a solid $5.8 million on Mondogoal, which is a really reasonable price and something you're going to want to look into long and hard. De Gea and Courtois are more likely to keep clean sheets, but Myhill's right there. Our differential this week, I've got two for you, and I've got two for you in a couple different categories. First, I want to talk about Lucas Fabianski. His value is up around £8 million. He has Hull City coming to Swansea, and he's had a pretty solid season as well. Swansea's defense is well organized, and Hull's attack is pretty mediocre, particularly away from home. So the reason that I called Fabianski a differential is I think that Courtois at £100,000 more is probably a better option and something that fantasy managers certainly will reach for, considering the popularity of Chelsea and the knowledge that Chelsea has been keeping, I believe, the second most clean sheets behind Southampton for the season. The other differential that I mentioned that I actually forgot to write up in my article because, I don't want to lead somebody down a bad path, and that is Kasper Schmeichel for Leicester. There's a chance that Leicester match gets slightly out of hand. West Ham doesn't play much defense. They like to attack. They like to cross. Leicester's not particularly well organized. This is such an important game for Leicester. If they want any hope of staying in the Premier League for next season, Schmeichel, I believe, will draw the start, which would be his first start in quite some time since breaking his metatarsal bone in his foot. But none of this really matters. What matters is he is only £3.5 million on Mondogoal. That is barely over half of what typical average players go for, which is usually around £6 million. So you can take him at £3.5 million and pretty much take any forward you want and probably most of your midfielders. So there's a lot to be said for the budget that will open up from taking Schmeichel, but it's not without risk. It's something I would consider in a large upside tournament, such as a Mondogoal qualifier with 100 entries, maybe even a Mondogoal qualifier with 22 entries. If being first is the only thing that matters, then the risk might pay off for a guy like Schmeichel. And honestly, at £3.5 million, he could let 2 goals in and have a couple saves and get his 90 minutes and not kill you. So think long and hard about Schmeichel. I could see him, if he draws a start, being someone to target. I'm not sure if that has been announced for certain, so keep an eye on team news. Keep an eye on Schmeichel. Don't get mad at me if it doesn't work out, because it certainly could go down in flames. Let's go to defenders now. This is a name that we've gotten very accustomed to talking about all season, and that's Branislav Ivanovic. He has a very favorable match at Stamford Bridge. He gets forward. He's got a good shot at a clean sheet. And while his price has gotten to a bit of an expensive range, he's reliable. He's unlikely to get you fewer than 6 or 7 points, even if they give up a goal. So we like Ivanovic. We always like Ivanovic. If you don't have room for him, there are some there are some other options. I don't know if they're better options, but there's some less expensive options. So let's move into those. Next, we have Jeffrey Schlupp from Leicester. As we mentioned, Leicester is playing for their lives and may get a little bit more aggressive this week at home against West Ham. So Schlupp plays forward, and he's listed as a defender. We've mentioned this many times. We don't even list him as a differential this week because it seems like this is more common knowledge now that Schlupp is a good opportunity to potentially get clean sheet points, but also is in the attack. He's not that cheap. He's £7.9 million, but definitely worth looking into in a match that could get to 2-2 or 3-2 one direction. Carl Jenkinson is our next selection. West Ham again. We're selecting players from a match that could get out of hand with goals. It happens. We are selecting attacking defenseman or an attacking winger like Schlupp. Jenkinson gets forward. He is relatively inexpensive, checking in around £6.9 million. Cresswell is also an option, but is slightly more expensive, so we're going to opt for Jenkinson this week. Chris Baird is the next player we have on our list here. He's a mere £5.3 million. We believe he's going to start for West Brom, and West Brom, as we mentioned, has a really solid matchup with QPR away from home at the Hawthorns, and Baird should start. We're not absolutely certain Baird will start, which carries some risk, but we believe he will, and we believe that at his value, he is an excellent option. Some teams in the upside leagues may look to start, 2 or 3 defenders for West Brom along with Myhill. So we don't think that's a bad option. We think that they could be slightly overlooked due to some uncertainty surrounding Dawson being banned, and who the starters will be. McCauley is an option, Lescott's an option. So we're going to go with Baird. We believe he's going to start, but I wouldn't blame you for opting for McCauley or Lescott, seeing as they're more guaranteed to be in the 11. Our differential for this week is Ryan Taylor of Newcastle. We've been looking for a place to play Ryan Taylor and finding the right situation where he could be a solid contributor for our defense. He's away from home, which is not ideal, but he is away from home at Sunderland, which might be ideal. They're pretty bad all around. I don't think they're responding well to their new manager, and they don't really have a whole lot of talent, so I'm not sure that would matter anyhow. Taylor is very reasonably priced following his injury, following the fact that Newcastle has been more or less incapable of keeping goals out. But Sunderland can't score either, so the risk of Sunderland scoring 2 or 3 goals is somewhat limited. Certainly possible, but somewhat limited. And Taylor takes a number of set pieces from Newcastle. He's going to be getting forward a lot with Jan Mott playing center back. And Taylor, isn't afraid to take some shots. So if he can get a goal, if he can get an assist, he is more than going to pay off. And I don't see a lot of other managers selecting him. So that gives you, the definition of differential and why we try to bring those types of players up, because they're the ones that are a lot more fun to make money with. Moving on to the midfield. We're going to start with Juan Mata, Manchester United. And I mentioned in the article, there are 4 things that we really look at. These are not in order, but we look at form, we look at opportunity, we look at matchup, and we look at quality. And if you look at Mata, he has form. He scored 2 goals last time out. His second goal, the bicycle, was incredible. He has an opportunity because he is virtually guaranteed to be selected by the Hall this week. So I would be shocked if he wasn't in the 11. He has the matchup, as he has Aston Villa coming to Old Trafford, and he has the quality. And as I mentioned, with that second goal last week, if you're still questioning Mata's quality, then I don't know what to tell you. Certainly, Van Gaal hasn't been a huge fan of his as this season has worn on. But Mata has proven his worth, and I think really forced his way into the lineup. So I can't imagine in this matchup that I'll find a good reason not to start Mata, and I would suggest you consider the same. My next selection is Gylfi Sigurdsson of Swansea. They've got Hull coming to Swansea. Sigurdsson has had an up and down season, but really in the last 4 matches, following his injury and including the friendly that he played for Iceland, he's averaged just around 10 Mondogoal points per game, which is really a solid number considering his current value at £10.7 million. And if he's able to get a goal or an assist, he can score more than 10 Mondogoal points, and that's going to be something that puts you in good shape. Next, we have Stuart Downing. West Ham has had an up-and-down season. They were looking really solid there for a while, but a lot of that was schedule-related, and they were able to take advantage of the lesser teams on their schedule and then really ran into a lot of trouble when they played teams that were more talented than they were. Last match and now this match, they are finally getting back towards the bottom of the table with their opponents, and this time they go to King Power Stadium against Leicester, and I think West Ham could take advantage of Leicester and their lack of defense. I like Downing. His values come down to where it makes sense to give him a chance, and I think this is a good week to do it. Next, we have Craig Gardner. As we mentioned, we would like to get some exposure to West Brom players. Gardner, again, not guaranteed to start. We're not entirely sure what Pulis will do this weekend, but Gardner has a really nice value at £6.6 million, and while he doesn't have a tremendous amount of upside in terms of goals and assists, we do think that he's pretty comfortable to get you 4, 5, 6 points, and at his value, if you're trying to fit in some higher budget players, it makes sense. However, I don't know if it makes more sense than our differential, and that's Wayne Routledge of Swansea. We mentioned Gylfi Sigurdsson, and we like Swansea. We like Gomes, who we didn't write up, but we do like Gomes. I guess we put him as a differential. There we go. Routledge has been playing better of late, and he's gotten pretty active. Had a couple shots on goal, which is not necessarily something we're going to count on, but would certainly be a bonus if he can do that, because he's a mere £6.5 million. So if you start packing in some shots on goal, or if he can get an assist, he's going to be all over the place, and whole city is going to have trouble containing him. Montero is still a little bit banged up, and I think Routledge may be asked to go 90 minutes, and if he does that, £6.5 million is not going to be a tremendous price to pay for a guy that should be able to get you 6 to 8 points. Moving on to forward. Forward's very interesting this week. There's a lot of different options. None of them, besides Wayne Rooney, really jump out at me as being plays that I'm very excited about, either due to the amount of budget that it's going to take to secure that player, or just due to the matchup or quality of the players we're looking at. But we've got names, we've got some ideas, and we want to try to steer you in the right direction, and hopefully we all make the right selections this weekend on our teams. So I'm going to start out with England's new king, Harry Kane. Tottenham is playing at Turf Moor, which is typically this season, considering Burnley are currently facing relegation, Turf Moor has been a very difficult place to play when you look at it under that microscope. But it's still, they're still a bottom table team facing the most informed striker in the, well, we'll say in England, possibly the world. Harry Kane has just been outstanding. Able to notch his first international goal as an Englishman last weekend, and in I think 40 seconds or so. Harry Kane is just taking over. His value is up to £16.9 million, which almost necessitates him scoring a goal. So if you wanted to pass on Kane, I totally understand that. It depends on the type of league you're playing in. He's just been so gifted lately that it seems difficult to pass on him, especially because I don't think this is a particularly difficult week to fit the players you want in your budget. Don't take Kane at your own risk. I'm probably going to try to fit him in. I like him a bit more than Giroud, who I'm about to get to. I think I might like Aguero, considering the discount. But we're going to move on to those players here and try to talk through the strategy and the thought process in selecting among solid options that do have a gap in their values and what they're going to cost you. So moving on to Olivier Giroud with Arsenal. They are hosting Liverpool in a really important match where Liverpool is going to be missing Martin Skrtel. As my partner Mzungo mentioned in our forums, which if you haven't checked out our forums, they're up and running. We're going to start trying to get some action in there, try to get everybody talking, and really enjoy the learning process of becoming a fantasy manager, a daily fantasy manager. The differences that encompasses and the strategies and the thought process. We love to talk about this stuff. We'll talk about it all day, every day if you engage us. And being as someone who started doing this in the U.S. and has made a healthy bit of money on this, I want to share it because I've been helped along the way as well. And we're open and willing to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So the forums are a great place to do that. Obviously Twitter as well, but just wanted to mention that, we finally have them up and running. We're really excited about it, and we really hope you take part. So, Olivier Giroud, as I mentioned, Mzunga, in our forum mentioned that, Skrtel is going to be a big miss for Liverpool. They really depend on him for the heart of their defense. He's a really tough player. He can mark a tall target man like Giroud, and missing him will be a big problem for Liverpool, especially away from home. So the one problem with Giroud is he's gotten a little bit on the expensive side. He usually is able to get a couple shots on goal, so he's not necessarily dependent on scoring or assisting, but at his 14.3 million pounds, it is a little bit on the expensive side. So I agree with Nzonga. I think this is an interesting opportunity. I think this is something that other fantasy managers may overlook, is that Liverpool may not have the defense they have had of late, but the the form that Giroud's in has brought his price up along with it. So there's some risk there. It kind of depends on how your team's shaking out, the types of league you're in, but Giroud's definitely a solid option this week. The reason I'm a little hesitant is because I like my next pick here, Sergio Aguero, quite a bit more at a slight discount. He's a more prolific scorer overall, though he's been in a slight slump lately. He notched early on for Argentina in a friendly this week. I have to believe that he is getting healthier. Anytime you have a player like his who's so dependent on his explosiveness, when you have a knee injury, you're going to have some issues. And, I'm not sure if he stayed out as long as he should have stayed out. The knee is something that's going to gradually heal. I'm not a doctor. We do have Ben Dinnery for that, so I'd love to have him weigh in on the fitness of Aguero's knee. But in my experience, I do think that things tend to heal over time. He hasn't been particularly great lately, but in a away match at Crystal Palace is far from intimidating. And Manchester City, has the ability to put up 2, 3, 4 goals at any time. So Aguero's really attracted me at just 13 million pounds when he's equally or more likely to score than Kane. But the player that I will probably slot in immediately in my lineups, and I would suggest you do the same, is Wayne Rooney. He's been playing striker for United. His value has not caught up to that change in role, and at 10.5 million pounds, whether it be a cash game or upside leagues, I can't imagine not just playing Rooney and moving on. And I left out Diego Costa. I believe Diego Costa will play, but his hamstring's not in good shape, and it's been something that's been nagging him the entire season. It's not a particularly important game for Chelsea. Well, all of the games are important, but not a particularly difficult game for Chelsea. It's one that they could easily win at Stamford Bridge with Remy or with Drogba deputizing for Costa. So, you're not going to know if he's going to play for sure until you see him in the lineup, and you're not going to see him in the lineup if you are playing the Arsenal-Liverpool contest. So, in that sense, I don't think Costa's so inexpensive at 11.7 million that you need to worry about him. I think you take Rooney, you move on. And if you do want to use a player in that range, my first differential is Leftemi Gomis, the French national, who replaced Wilfred Bony, but has not really brought the goals that Bony had for Swansea, and that's hurt them quite a bit. Their defense has still played fairly well, but Gomis has just not been the scorer that they thought he might be able to be. But home matches against Hull City can tend to bring that out of you, and this is a match where I think Gomis is going to really flirt with a goal or two, be very involved in the attack, and along with Rooney, I could see slotting Gomis up there if you wanted to do that, and then selecting among Kane and Giroud. I think this is a week to play 3 strikers. I'm not as enamored with some of the midfield options. So if you can fit 3 strikers into your budget, I like Aguero, I like Rooney, I also like Gomis. Those might be the 3 that I go with, but I'm certainly not going to blame you if you play Giroud or Kane if you can fit them in. And I'm going to give you a bonus differential, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I know that I've mentioned this guy a few too many times, and he hasn't quite performed, and that's Graziano Pella. He broke some hearts for in England with his goal in the friendly, but he really needed to see that ball go in the net. I think a striker, confidence can be very important, and Pella was just not playing particularly well. Ronald Koeman hasn't given up on him, though. Shane Long has been playing better than Pella of late, but he managed to fit both of them in his lineup last match, and he mentioned today that I think that he's going to keep Pella up there. So if that's the case, Everton has been very up and down defensively. It's hard to say if at Goodison Park they're going to be able to keep a clean sheet and keep Southampton out. Southampton can't really score goals, but again, his value, because he hasn't been scoring, has dropped all the way down to £6.5 million for Pella. It's not much. It's not much for a striker that certainly has an opportunity to score. Chances are I won't take him. As I mentioned, I like some other options more. I don't think budget really is going to force you to have to risk Pella. But I want to throw his name out there. You can get mad at me if you want. I'm not really suggesting you risk a lot of money on him. But if you're in a situation where you need a differential, you need to win out of a really large field, I consider Pella. Last but not least, we mentioned this in our articles. I want to say it now that I'm reading the articles. You can have any player you want on Mondogoal, but you can't have every player. So use your budget wisely. And this is something that I've thought of since I've really started playing daily fantasy sports seriously, is you're going to get frustrated and you're going to want to fit all of the really good plays into your lineup. Mondogoal makes it so you can't do that. And so you need to mentally come to terms with the fact that you're not going to be able to have Harry Kane, Olivier Giroud, and Wayne Rooney. And you have to kind of weigh that, and you have to decide, what's the best way to use my budget? What's the optimal way to use my budget? And I like to think that it's okay if you decide you want to select Sergio Aguero over Olivier Giroud, and everybody else takes Giroud, and Giroud beats Aguero. That doesn't mean you made a bad decision overall. It means your process is probably okay if you were pretty sure that Aguero had an equal or better chance of scoring than Giroud, and it just didn't happen for you. So, that's a two-part thought. You need to be able to come to terms that you're not going to be able to have every player you want. You need to come to terms that there's a lot of randomness here. Goals are random. Assists are random. We can only do what we can do, and take the best process into each week. And I think we're trying to do that here, trying to help you learn, create your own process, and have fun with it. And I hope you enjoyed this. Went a little bit longer than anticipated, but fantasyfootballbackers.co.uk. We're doing some really great stuff, and we hope that you're enjoying it, making some money, and learning about the daily fantasy football industry in the UK. Thanks, and talk again soon.